So we are in chapter 3. The first chapter was Arjuna was confused on the battlefield about whether he should continue with this war or start. So we are in chapter 3. The first chapter was Arjuna was. I just kind of disabled the sound there. So I hope you all can hear me. And then the second chapter was Lord Krishna is explaining that he needs to engage in that action and not go along that line of worry that he had. So now we are in chapter 3, which is called Karma Yoga. Arjuna said, "Oh Janardana, we are going to chant the ones which are in blue, which is in English. So, oh Janardana, oh Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive action? My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be the most beneficial for me." The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand it by empirical, philosophical speculation, and others by devotional service. Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. One who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on the sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. Perform your prescribed duty, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed, otherwise work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain free from bondage. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods along with sacrifices for Vishnu and blessed them by saying, "Be thou happy by this yagna, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation." Thus, the demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you, and thus by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. In charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yagna, will supply all necessities to you. But he who enjoys such gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. All living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by the performance of yagna, and yagna is born of prescribed duties. Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in the act of sacrifice. My dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice, thus established by the Vedas, suddenly leads a life full of sin. Living only for the satisfaction of the senses, such a person lives in vain. But for the one who takes pleasure in the self, one whose human life is one of self-realization and who is satisfied in the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. A self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor he has any reason not to perform such work. nor has he any need to depend on any other living being. Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of the activities, one should act as a matter of duty, for by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. So the next person can continue. Hello? Okay. So kings such as Janaka abs- Kings such as Janaka attained perfection solely by performance of prescribed duties. Therefore, just for the sake of educating the people, you should perform your work. The next person can continue.
O son of Partha, there is no work prescribed for me within all the three planetary
Yeah, the
systems.
other one, whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. Now you can continue. The translation part, this one.
O son of Partha, there is no work prescribed for me within all the three planetary systems, nor am I in want of anything, nor have I a need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. For if I ever fail to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties, O Parth, certainly all men would follow my path. If I did not perform prescribed duties, all these worlds would be put to ruination. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, the learned may similarly act, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path. So, as not to disturb the minds of ignorant men attached to the fruitive results of prescribed duties, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. One who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, Almighty Am, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the difference between work in devotion and work for the fruity results. Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. Therefore, O Arjun, surrendering all your works up unto me with full knowledge of me, without desires of profit, with no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. Those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow this teaching faithfully without envy become free from the bondage of fruitive actions. But those who are out of envy, disregard these teachings, and do not follow them are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled, and ruined in their endeavors for perfection. Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes. What can repress and accomplish? There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the sense and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duties perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another duty. For to follow another's path is dangerous. Arjun said, O descendant of Vishnu, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force?
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material movement of passion and transformed into wrath, which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. As fire is covered with smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. Thus, a wise living entity, pure consciousness, becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and burns like fire. The senses, the mind, and the intelligent are the sitting places of this, though through them it covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. Therefore, Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, in the very curb of this great symbol of sin, by regulating the senses and slay the destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. These working senses are superior to dull matter. The mind is higher than the senses. The intelligence is still higher than the mind, and the soul is even higher than the intelligence. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental of the material senses, mind and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy. And so now we are done with chapter 2.
अर्जुन उवाच जायसि चेत् कर्मणाहुतम् अर्जुन उवाच आहुरिन्द्रियेभ्यः परं मनः मनसस्तु परा बुद्धिर्यो बुद्धेः चतुर्थोऽध्यायः ज्ञानकर्मसन्न्यासयोगः श्रीभगवानुवाच इमं विवस्वते योगं प्रोक्तवानहमव्ययम् विवस्वान्मनवे प्राह मनुरिक्ष्वाकवे ब्रवीत् एवं परम्परा प्राप्तम् इमं राजर्षयो विदुः सकाले नेह महता योगो नष्टः परन्तप स एवायं मया तेऽद्य योगः प्रोक्तः पुरातनः भक्तोऽसि मे सखा चेति रहस्यं ह्येतदुत्तमम् अर्जुन उवाच अपरं भवतो जन्म परं जन्म विवस्वतः कथमेतद्विजानीयां त्वमादौ प्रोक्तवानिति श्रीभगवानुवाच बहूनि मे व्यतीतानि जन्मानि तव चार्जुन तान्यहं वेद सर्वाणि न त्वं वेत्थ परन्तप अजोऽपि सन्नव्ययात्मा भूतानामीश्वरोऽपि सन् प्रकृतिं स्वामधिष्ठाय सम्भवाम्यात्ममायया यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानमधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम् परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृताम् धर्मसंस्थापनार्थाय सम्भवामि युगे युगे जन्म कर्म च मे दिव्यम् एवं यो वेत्ति तत्त्वतः त्यक्त्वा देहं पुनर्जन्म नैति मामेति सोऽर्जुन वीतरागभयक्रोधा मन्मया मामुपाश्रिताः बहवो ज्ञानतपसा पूता मद्भावमागताः ये यथा मां प्रपद्यन्ते तांस्तथैव भजाम्यहम् मम वर्त्मानुवर्तन्ते मनुष्याः पार्थ सर्वशः काङ्क्षन्तः कर्मणां सिद्धिं यजन्त इह देवताः क्षिप्रं हि मानुषे लोके सिद्धिर्भवति कर्मजा चातुर्वर्ण्यं मया सृष्टं गुणकर्म विभागशः तस्य कर्तारमपि मां विद्य कर्तारमव्ययम् न मां कर्माणि लिम्पन्ति न मे कर्मफले स्पृहा इति मां योऽभिजानाति कर्मभिर्न स बध्यते एवं ज्ञात्वा कृतं कर्म पूर्वैरपि मुमुक्षुभिः कुरु कर्मैव तस्मात् त्वं पूर्वैः पूर्वतरं कृतम् किं कर्म किमकर्मेति कवयोऽप्यत्र मोहिताः तत्ते कर्म प्रवक्ष्यामि यज्ञात्वा मोक्ष्यसे शुभात् कर्मणो ह्यपि बोद्धव्यं च विकर्मणः अकर्मणश्च बोद्धव्यं गहना कर्मणो गतिः कर्मण्यकर्म यः पश्येदकर्मणि च कर्म यः स बुद्धिमान् मनुष्येषु स युक्तः कृत्स्नकर्मकृत् यस्य सर्वे समारम्भाः कामसङ्कल्पवर्जिताः ज्ञानाग्निदग्धकर्माणं तमाहुः पण्डितं बुधाः त्यक्त्वा कर्मफलासङ्गं नित्यतृप्तो निराश्रयः कर्मण्यभिप्रवृत्तोऽपि नैव किञ्चित् करोति सः निराशीर्यत चित्तात्मा त्यक्त सर्वपरिग्रहः शारीरं केवलं कर्म कुर्वन्नाप्नोति किल्बिषम् यदृच्छालाभसन्तुष्टो द्वन्द्वातीतो विमत्सरः समः सिद्धावसिद्धौ च कृत्वापि न निबध्यते गतसङ्गस्य मुक्तस्य ज्ञानावस्थितचेतसः यज्ञायाचरतः कर्म समग्रं प्रविलीयते ब्रह्मार्पणं ब्रह्महविर्ब्रह्माग्नौ ब्रह्मणाहुतम् ब्रह्मैव तेन गन्तव्यं ब्रह्मकर्म समाधिना दैवमेवापरे यज्ञं योगिनः पर्युपासते ब्रह्माज्ञावपरे यज्ञं यज्ञेनैवोपजुह्वति श्रोत्रादीनिन्द्रियाण्यन्ये संयमाग्निषु जुह्वति शब्दादीन् विषयानन्य इन्द्रियाग्निषु जुह्वति सर्वाणीन्द्रियकर्माणि प्राणकर्माणि चापरे आत्मसंयमयोगाग्नौ जुह्वति ज्ञानदीपिते द्रव्ययज्ञास्तवो यज्ञा योगयज्ञास्तथा परे स्वाध्यायज्ञानयज्ञाश्च यतयः संश्रितव्रताः अपाने जुह्वति प्राणं प्राणोपानं तथा परे प्राणापानगतिरुद्ध्वा प्राणायामपरायणाः अपरे नियताहाराः प्राणान् प्राणेषु जुह्वति सर्वेऽप्येते यज्ञविदो यज्ञक्षपितकल्मषाः यज्ञशिष्टामृतभुजो यान्ति ब्रह्म सनातनम् नायं लोकोऽस्त्य यज्ञस्य कुतोऽन्यः कुरु सत्तमा एवं बहुविधा यज्ञा वितता ब्रह्मणो मुखे कर्मजान् विद्धितान् सर्वान् एवं ज्ञात्वा विमोक्ष्यसे श्रेयान् द्रव्यमयाद्यज्ञात् ज्ञानयज्ञः परन्तप सर्वं कर्माखिलं पार्थ ज्ञाने परिसमाप्यते तद्विद्धि प्रणिपातेन परिप्रश्नेन सेवया उपदेक्ष्यन्ति ते ज्ञानं ज्ञानिनस्तत्त्वदर्शिनः यज्ञात्वा न पुनर्मोहम् एवं यास्यसि पाण्डव येन भूतान्यशेषाणि द्रक्ष्यस्यात्मन्यथा मयि अपि चेदसि पापेभ्यः सर्वेभ्यः पापकृत्तमः सर्वं ज्ञानप्लवेनैव वृजिनं सन्तरिष्यसि यथैधांसि समिद्धोऽग्निर्भस्मसात् कुरुतेऽर्जुन ज्ञानाग्निः सर्वकर्माणि भस्मसात् कुरुते तथा.
All right, we will continue tomorrow now. Thank you.